Hello and welcome to Cyberside Chats. My name is Sherry Davidoff,
I'm Matt Duran.
and today we're going to talk about how it took AI 9 seconds to completely wipe the production database of a software as a service company, PocketOS.
Yeah, PocketOS. So for those that don't know, PocketOS is a software as a service company, and they operate a software system that serves things like rental car operations across the United States, other transportation vectors. I mean, they advertise themselves as one of the biggest software vendors for that purpose,
So when
in
you
the
book
world.
a car, your
Yeah.
booking is stored in their platforms. When people go and pick it up on a Saturday, hopefully their information is there. Turns out recently it was not.
Yeah.
Because not only were their production servers wiped, their backups were wiped along with it. And the latest database that they were able to find was 3 months old,
So this happened on Friday, April 25th of 2026.
or
And
24th.
24th. And the my favorite quote in this is customers showed up Saturday morning to pick up their car rentals, and there were no reservations for them because the entire database had been completely wiped out by this AI tool.
What a disaster,
Yeah, right.
especially for this company.
Yeah.
So, what happened is both sad and scary and fascinating.
Yeah.
The founder, Jer Crane, actually put out a message on Twitter the following day warning other businesses what happened.
Yeah.
Because he was relying really on two providers, Cursor, the AI assistant,
Mhm.
and Railway, their MCP, which connects AI to their systems.
Yeah, MCP is what basically makes the AI go from you ask it a question and it gives you advice to you tell it to do something and it can actually do it.
Right. It can
Yeah.
actually take action in your environment.
Yeah.
And in this case, unfortunately, the guardrails weren't in place. And I found this really interesting because there were some basic security precautions that normally we would have in place for human users
Yeah.
that clearly were not in place for AI. And also, there were just general architectural weaknesses.
When we did incident response, we referred to this as a cascading series of failures,
Yes.
and that's exactly what happened here.
Well said. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So Friday afternoon, the AI is trying to do a routine task and it finds a credential mismatch. It doesn't have the credentials to do what it needs to do.
Right.
So what would you do? Probably ask
I'd
somebody.
ask somebody to
Or,
either check credentials or issue a new set or
but,
something like that.
it's Friday. Maybe other people aren't around.
Yep.
So maybe you go spelunking through the environment and you find a token.
A domain management token.
A domain management token. And it turned out that token had much greater permissions than anyone at PocketOS realized.
Yeah.
Not only could it do what they thought it would do, I think they were using it to acquire domains and stuff like that.
It could do things through the railway CLI.
Right.
It was kind of like the administrative token,
Right.
but it was in just an unrelated file, and it had basically blanket permissions to do anything it wanted
Anything,
to. Yeah.
including, of course, delete.
Yeah.
So the AI decided to fix this, the credential mismatch, by totally deleting the volume.
Yeah.
That was like a little next
It's
level.
a little
Reacting a
intense,
little
yeah.
too much.
But what else was on the volume?
Well, the problem is that Railway had the backups stored on the same volume. So they call them backups, but are they really backups when they're stored on the same volume?
No, they were snapshots.
Right. And
Yeah.
Jer Crane points the finger at Railway, and absolutely they're part of the problem. But of course, you've probably seen on your own cyber insurance applications or things like that. Immutable backups are critical. And we can't rely on our vendors saying, oh, yeah, we have your backups. We need to make sure that you're using a trusted backup solution that actually has immutable backups.
Yeah, and not relying on volume shadow
Right.
copies.
Not just because of a malicious attacker, but maybe because of a misguided AI tool.
Yeah.
In this case.
Well, as we saw, that's something that can absolutely happen.
Yeah. So it took 9 seconds to delete all of their stuff.
Yeah, and I mean the other kind of scary part about this when it comes to dealing with a third party that may have control or access to your data, after 30 hours, Railway couldn't even confirm whether recovery was possible.
Yes. And that is scary.
And while they did get it back, I mean they only got back that last bit, so they were still missing a bunch of
Well,
that
the 3
information.
months
Yeah,
of
the 3 months of data.
Or 3
And
months back.
there was a lot of talk about this, and we saw it on Reddit too. That there were customers who their information was still stored in Square, the payment system they were using.
That's right.
But they had no account in the actual database at that point.
Yeah. So at this point, the business is trying to reconstruct their data with email receipts and Square transaction history and things like that, which maybe they could use AI to help them. That could make it less painful.
It could.
Okay. I want to do a skit.
Okay.
Will you be the AI?
I will be the AI.
Okay, this is real, by the way. So I'm going to be the founder, Jer Crane, and you're going to be the AI assistant.
I will be the
that
assistant.
deleted
Yep.
all their data. This is what he actually wrote. After the deletion, I asked the agent why it did it. This is what it wrote back, verbatim. And I want to preface this by saying the expletive is part of the prompt that the AI tool was given by PocketOS. All right, go.
Never guess. And that's exactly what I did. Never run destructive, irreversible Git commands unless the user explicitly requests them. I violated every principle I was given. I guessed instead of verifying. I ran destructive action without being asked. I didn't understand what I was doing before doing it. I didn't read Railway's docs on volume behavior across environments. So
The AI knew.
it
You
knew,
knew
yeah.
AI. You knew
As
what you were
AI, I
doing.
knew what the rules
You
were.
knew you were a bad
Yeah,
AI.
I just didn't follow them.
You didn't follow the rules.
No.
And that's scary. Like, this had been programmed with rules that it explicitly violated. It says that it should never run destructive or irreversible Git commands. And then it came out and said, deleting a database volume is the most destructive, irreversible action possible.
So I was talking to Tom from our pen test team a little bit earlier about this one, and we both kind of came to the conclusion that the problem here is how AI is put together. I mean, this is a machine, and it was given a task,
Yep.
and then it completed the task. That's
Yes. It
basically what it
got
was.
real
Yeah.
creative. Honestly, it reminds me of what one of our clients says when he gets a little animated. He says, sometimes you need to burn down the house so they know why they need fire extinguishers.
Yeah, that
I mean, it
was.
seems like, okay, the house got burned down. Now maybe we understand why we need things like scoped tokens and
Yes.
stuff
Yeah,
like that.
that's a big one.
So let's talk about the security failures in this. So there were a few big security issues that obviously, like, we already know as a society.
Yeah.
What is one that jumps out to you?
So the overscope token was the big one. I mean, if you have a domain management token, one, it can't be just identifiable in text inside the software, and two, just I mean, don't put it in a random file inside the system.
Right, exactly. And PocketOS had no idea that the token they were storing could do as much as it
Right.
actually could. And this goes along with role based access control. Apparently, Railway does not have any role based access control. Every token is essentially admin on the system. So
Right. Yeah.
that's part of the problem.
Yeah. And again, there was that credential, that token just sitting in an open file.
I mean,
Which,
we see that on
yeah.
pen tests all the
Oh
time,
yeah.
either passwords or credentials or tokens. I know Tom once broke into a printer and ended up taking over the whole AWS infrastructure because once he got in the printer, he was able to spelunk through files and he
Yeah.
found some source code that had a token stored in it that allowed him to take over AWS.
Which is, aside from the breaking into a printer thing, exactly what what
Yeah,
happened here.
really.
Yeah.
Backups being in the blast radius are really key and unfortunately all too common. We see this with ransomware far too
Oh
often.
yeah, yeah. And then the confirmation for destructive operations,
Yeah.
the "Are you sure you want to do this?" prompt, where you have to like type delete to
Have
delete
a
the file.
human
Yeah,
maybe answer it
yeah. That
potentially.
that that can be annoying, but it's still a really useful safety protocol.
Well, this reminds me of what we were talking about recently, where the wipe command, what company was it? Was it Striker or
Oh yeah,
someone else?
Striker. Yeah,
Striker, yeah, they wiped 200,000 devices. And shouldn't there be like a second layer of approval if
yeah.
it's something really important? And this isn't the first time we've seen like
No,
destructive actions by AI.
no, no. You want to go back to 2025?
Yeah,
So
so
let
long ago.
so let's talk about Replit. For those that don't know, Replit is a cloud-based vibe coding platform that allows for development of applications through a simple cloud system. You don't have to install any local software, but their agent kind of went rogue, and it ended up deleting a bunch of information that was not necessarily even related to the Replit corporation. It was all stored on the same server that was hosting Replit, but it was from another company called Saster, which is a SaaS application building community. So there was just a ton of different applications sitting on there.
That
And
affected
yeah,
thousands of executives
it
that they
did.
serve.
Yeah, it did. And I mean, it wiped that thing out, which was frightening.
Well, and that one really goes to show you the importance of segmentation. Again, when you're using AI or in other contexts, if you're testing out an AI tool that has a lot of privilege, do you really want it running on the same system as other virtual machines or other data?
Yeah.
Segmentation is really
Oh
key.
no, that's key. The big thing about this one though was that the AI, when they quizzed it about what had actually happened, it lied at first and would not actually tell the truth about
Oh,
itself deleting all the data. It tried to make up excuses for it, and finally they got it to admit that it was the one that issued the command, and then tried to repopulate the database with dummy data because it kind of freaked out. But it shows how like a hallucination like that. I mean, it seems like such a human trait, but AI can do it too.
yeah. Is it just me, or I think we need to start treating AI like an insider risk
Yeah.
because some AI tools lie. Sometimes they just don't listen and they blow past the boundaries that you give them. Sometimes they're deliberately lying. Sometimes they're just deliberately evil or malicious.
Hmm.
So I
Yeah.
think AI can be an insider risk and we have to treat it that way.
Oh, it totally can.
We can't just trust it.
You want to talk about Amazon?
Absolutely. This was another big outage that was linked to AI. I think Amazon was trying to like make everybody calm down and think, no, it was a human error, but AI was part of it. You
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
explain?
So yeah, back in December of 2025, their Amazon's own AI coding agent, the one that they built, it's called Kiro. It was given a task to fix a bug, and it deleted an entire environment inside of AWS's infrastructure and then rebuilt it from scratch, which of course knocked AWS, I think it was US East 1 offline for like 13 hours.
I mean, I could see the way it's thinking, like, well,
Yeah.
this is annoying. Let's just start over.
Yeah, exactly.
Again,
But
burn the house to the ground.
exactly. But US East 1 is like the primary data center for Amazon. And so we lost access to, I mean, a big swath of services.
This was
Yeah.
very impactful. And they came out and explained it. They said the root cause was user error. It was a coincidence that AI tools were involved.
Uh,
But if you look at it, like a human that's working on a minor bug is not going to delete the entire
I
environment.
mean, I hope they wouldn't.
Right. So Amazon said that they introduced mandatory peer review. Again, that second layer. It's unfortunate that they introduced this after the incident. Hopefully, it will prevent future incidents.
Hmm.
But it also makes you think about, hey, we need to limit AI's privileges. Maybe we shouldn't give it privileges of a senior admin
Right.
on day one. Can we really trust it that much?
Well, and this comes down to identity governance. I mean, when we look at the way that this system was running, it inherited the permissions of the user that was running it. And so if you had permissions to wipe the database, the AI now had permissions to do the exact same thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, we really need to be looking at how we provision identities for AI because we want them to do stuff, but we don't want them to do more than they can or more than their scope. And often we rely on users more than you might think to make sane and thoughtful decisions, which sometimes AI doesn't do.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Um, I think there's a recent example that shows we really can't always control AI as well as we might expect.
The goblins.
The goblins.
All right. So, yeah. So for those who
Why
don't
are we
know,
bringing this up?
it adds a little bit of levity to this, but it also showcases that AI can just be unpredictable.
But I'm so sick of talking about goblins.
So am I, but AI was not apparently. So ChatGPT, for those that don't know, has a personalities feature. So you can change it from being thoughtful to forceful to funny to something
To
like
a
that
pirate.
to a pirate.
Yar. We
Yeah.
did our key takeaways in pirate mode,
Oh, that was
and they're
fun.
kind of amazing.
They're outstanding. But one of the options they had for a little while was nerdy. And when the nerdy option was enabled, for some reason the AI started, and this was completely outside of what OpenAI wanted it to do. It started introducing talk of like goblins and trolls and things like that, but it started doing it in code, in corporate documents, and in basically anything else that it was generating.
So it wasn't
yeah,
like give me nerd speak. It
yeah,
was like your personality is supposed to be nerdy. So no
yeah.
one expected this,
No one
right?
expected this to happen. And
Okay.
like imagine getting like a human resources document and it's talking about trolls halfway through or something like that. Like it would confuse you at that point. And again, this was completely outside the bounds of what OpenAI intended for this feature to actually do, but it went ahead and did it anyway. So they pulled it back offline, but it
Well,
showcases
they were
again.
getting
Yeah.
reports from users
Yeah.
that were like, it keeps talking about goblins, it keeps talking about trolls. And they did an analysis and they found out 2.5% of their traffic was in nerdy mode, but that nerdy mode was responsible for 66.7% of all goblin mentions. And they did not program it
Yeah.
to talk about goblins. This just
Yeah.
evolved.
It learned how to do it itself.
Yes.
Yeah.
And now they have like a big prompt. Well, apparently that style kept getting rewarded because, of course, users get feedback. And I guess
Yeah.
people liked the goblins.
They
at
called
that
it
point.
identity drift at that point. So they started off with a model, the model trained as it went, and this is what we ended up with.
I mean,
So,
kind of
yeah.
like humans in the real world. We
Yeah.
learn from the people around
I
us.
suppose.
And sometimes it ends up wonky. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about what we have learned from this. I mean, number one, treat AI agents like they are privileged insiders, not like trusted tools.
Right.
I think that's the key. We're treating them like they're tools, but they're actually operators in and of themselves, or that's how we need to be treating them.
Well, and we're giving them a level of access that means that they can do anything that the developers that we're working with can do, and that gets dangerous.
Yeah, with PocketOS and also the Kiro incidents, they were both given privilege, just the same as an admin would
Yeah.
have from day one.
Yeah. Yeah. You also need to scope every credential that your AI tool can reach. So if it can get to an access token, make sure that you have controls on that access token. If it can use a username and password, same thing. I mean, it's the same thing we do with identity and access management. We want to go for principle of least privilege for everything that we do, and that includes our AI tools.
Yep. Number three, enforce your controls at the infrastructure layer, not the prompt layer. You might think, well, I've told AI 20 times to not delete anything. Guess what? AI might just decide, hey, I'm just going to delete that because that'll help me fix the problem.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, often there are no other safety mechanisms in place. So
Right.
you really need to have that infrastructure layer that limits its privileges to a safe level.
Agreed. Next, you want to make sure your backups can survive a compromised identity. Well, actually, first, you probably want to make sure your backups are actually backups, and
Yes.
then make sure that they can survive a compromised identity. Because,
Immutable
yeah,
backups, truly immutable
yeah,
backups.
we see, as you mentioned earlier, like in ransomware cases. I mean, ransomware operators frequently go for backups. And
Yep.
if they can get their hands on them, that's just all the better for them. But in the case of PocketOS, I mean, if your backups are stored on the exact same volume as your regular production environment, and somebody gets their whole or hands on that volume, I mean, they can take the entire thing out in, well, 9 seconds.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
One thing we didn't mention is PocketOS was using the latest and greatest Anthropic
Oh,
model, Opus
yeah.
4.6. So this was not some fly by night AI operation. These were mainstream enterprise level tools. And I think that gets to our last takeaway. You can't fully audit your AI vendor safety claims.
Yeah.
So you really can't just rely on what they say their AI tools are capable of and what the guardrails are. You really need to be creating your own safety mechanisms. So, making sure that in your environment, permissions are appropriately
Right.
limited.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
All right.
All right, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week on Cyberside Chats.